Abrakeydabra is up 1 against Method EU as we're getting ourselves ready to go for Tol Dagor. We were seeing some lightning quick games previously here, is ironic.
I'm going to take one from Slutzbag here and say it's the small Dagor. These teams are doing it super quick right now. These times are so small, they're so quick. And Method EU has the fastest time in Tol Dagor of any of these teams. 13 minutes in time trials last week. These are the same affixes as 2 weekends ago. So they could definitely go quickly, but if they're going to run this interesting comp, they might not be able to go quite as fast.
And that being said, having, what was it, like 8 or 9 minutes into it, they're already getting into Knight Captain Valyria onto that one. And you mentioned previously here, and we'll reiterate it again, even when running these off-meta comps, they're right on the heels of their opponents. So I think like Nagura, if they have the execution, they should be able to handle it no problem because they're taking care of 70–80% of their trash just with the cannon.
I believe so as well, especially because, I mean, even Abra is running a kind of a weird comp, like non-meta comp. They have the Mage on Dr. J, right? They have a Mistweaver Unholy, so it's definitely not a standard comp they're running either in Tol Dagor. But it was such a fast run that we just saw from them. So having Method EU without apparently not too much practice match their time or even have a better time is going to be very difficult for them. But as you mentioned, I don't think the comp is going to matter too much for them just because of the cannon part making up most of the trash.
I think the most important thing is going to be, again, the Unholy DK. You can do such big pulls with the Unholy DK. They do so much damage, even not taking into account the cannon. If they don't have an Unholy DK, I think this is just going to be a freebie for Abrakeydabra.
That'll be an interesting point. You mentioned before the break onto that one, if they had the Unholy DK instead of the BM Hunter on a Waycrest, they would have been doing a lot better throughout some of their pulls, making sure they're reducing some of the threats, taking them down further. We'll see what they have right now as Tol Dagor is getting started.
And I've actually just received breaking news that Zyro really likes Unholy DK.
Really?
So interesting to see from him right now is the same comp we saw earlier. I mean, Abra's already dominated this map in the very first game of today. So they should be able to pull off the same thing. We're going to see not only immense amounts of damage coming out, of course, the Unholy DK. Hey, Zyro, you look at me when I talk to you. The Unholy DK, but also the Frost Mage. I mean, Jay himself pulled out 6, 7, 8, maybe even 800k DPS or something like that, Nagura.
Yeah, I'm just a little bit disappointed that Method is not sticking to their comp. They just switch back to the standard comp that they're known for. Unbelievable. Oof. I guess they lost a game against Abra and they're like, you know what? Maybe we should go back to that comp and actually try to win. So this is going to be a very close match, I believe. So Abra does have this insane time, but they already showed it on stream earlier, right? So Method EU definitely had time to watch that game, watch what Abra is doing, and maybe even had some time to try to copy it or even match their time. So definitely going to be interesting to see what both of those teams are going to do, as Abra is behind in boss damage, but just very slightly. It's just 1% difference, basically.
Yeah, I mean, Method can full out focus on the boss right now, but that's because Abra's trash pull was immense. I mean, they're going to get about 20, I think it was 23, 24%. Scratch that, 19%. Oh, they have an emissary there as well. Okay, so it'll be about 21, 22% by the end of it. Huge amounts of damage. I mean, that Frost Mage damage on top of it. Yes, of course, obviously overshadowed by the Unholy DK, but he was doing half of the Unholy DK's damage, which was well above both Mirus and Gingy on the side of Method EU. So big advantage to Abra right now. They're actually kind of keeping the tango going in terms of single target damage. They're not really too far behind as Method EU starts to pull ahead just a bit now, but that's because the upheaval on the Sand Queen was present for Abrakeydabra. So just a bit of time lost there as Method EU looks to finish off some of these buzzing drones that intersect past the boss, and they'll be heading upstairs soon. Abrakeydabra not far behind right now as they hit 4% on the boss just as Method EU kills it, and they get ready to move up the stairs soon as well.
Yeah, so there's 11% trash difference now between Abra and Method EU. Method EU does have to make up this trash somewhere. Now, one thing we saw earlier from Abra was that they were skipping some trash mobs in the cannon area. So that's something that Method EU could do and not lose too much time for it, because the cannons are dealing with the trash for you. So definitely want to pay attention to that trash count later on, specifically in the cannon area. Either way, now we're going to see 2 skips here come out for both of those teams as they go through this buff area where we see the rogues just open their cages and try to win the RNG lottery, because most of those teams only open the right 2 cages and they really hope to get the attack damage buff out of it. Now, for Abra, they also have a mage, so spell power would be helpful a little bit as well, but for Method EU, if they get the spell power, it's pretty wasted.
Get out of here with your spell power shenanigans right now. And it was nice to see as well, just it's the small things that make efficiency add up over the course of a dungeon. Method EU, you know, Gingy's obviously able to open those cages, but now being a blacksmith, he was able to use those monolite keys as well. So both of them opening a cage at the same time. Abrakeydabra wasting no time, starting the first hallway worth of trash in the Just Howless floor, likely looking to get that down. We know exactly what's going to happen. After this, Mock is going to use his Chi Burst and pull Just Howless through the wall so that they can avoid the Void Emissary on the far corner and then cleave everything down. Now, keep in mind, we are Necrotic here, so this is where things can get a bit dangerous for the tank. Right now, sitting at 41 stacks, plus one of the Arsonist debuffs. He goes and hides in the corner with a defensive Ring of Peace coming down from Mears. Gingy getting chunked low to 3%, now goes down, and Gingy procs Cheat Death. They do have the Battle Res available, immediately comes up from Zalia, or so from Frag rather, but I mean, Frag is going to go down, Mears is going to go down. There's so much splash aggro everywhere. It's going to be impossible for now to get it before the melee die.
Yeah, you can just see how difficult Necrotic is in those dungeons. You saw now go really high Necrotic stacks, then you saw him back off, going to this corner, but then there was a Raider that attacked him from the back. Just one single mob refreshed the Necrotic on him, and then he was unable to get rid of it, even with the Ring of Peace coming out, even with the help from the other ones coming out. There was just no way he could get rid of it. He's not a dwarf, so no stone form racial available, and this is just going to be a full team wipe. Sally does not even have Shadow Melt available, so they're just going to have to release and come back. As Abra is already fighting Just Howless here. He's in the second phase, and we'll see how they do this time around. The last time they had a very clean run, I think they only had 2 deaths throughout the whole Tol Dagor, so Abra definitely a huge advantage.
Zele is actually able to solo this trash for a while, back and forth, so he's actually trying to stay alive for as long as he can in order to get the Shadow Meld off, but the rest of the team said, you know what, we're just going to release and come back up because this is taking way too long. Gingy, I don't think has a Shroud available, so Zele doing what he can to finish off the trash. I'm not sure if he'll be able to finish it off, but his Shadow Meld is back up if he wants to use that defensively so that they don't have to use, actually, they don't even have a battle res, as Just House is already at 46% for Abro, sitting at 34% trash and 0 deaths on the board versus Method's 21% trash. The rest of the team comes up and joins them finally, and they get back into action. Zaylee, unfortunately, I mean, as fun as that was to see, I'm not really sure what it maintained. It maintained a bit of low trash, not much of it. He procced his staff doing it, and he had to go through a ton of resources doing it as well. So it was fun to see, but I guess he kind of salvaged what he could out of it as Method EU gets back into action right now, and Miras immediately goes down. Maybe they should have stuck to the other comp.
Yeah, maybe they should have. They actually did better with the other comp. The mirror somehow ended up on the other side of the cage. Not completely sure what happened there. So, but they don't have a battle rest available either way, so it wouldn't really matter. I think he might have gotten teleported when he pulled the boss.
Miras is back in jail where he belongs, Nicker.
Anyways, they ended up resetting the boss because they don't want to do the whole fight with only 2 damage dealers, which just costs too much. Thankfully, they did get the reset off, so the Sally should be able to cast the Masters, but it seems like he's in combat with the Void Emissary over there, as Jess Hallis was walking through the Void Emissary, somehow aggroed it, and now Sally's in combat, so they need to either wait for the Shadow Melt to be ready, but it's like a minute. Really long cooldown still, and Maris doesn't have a Shadow Melt either, so he probably has to release, run back up, try to somehow. This is gonna take a long time for them to get them back up.
This is a ridiculous series of events for Method EU. I feel like we should cue some Benny Hill music right now, but and Zaylee, I believe, used his Shadow Meld earlier when he's trying to fancily stay alive against those 3 mobs that didn't really buy him anything. So this ultimately cost him because Miras couldn't be res now because he couldn't use his Shadow Melt. So Abrakeydabra, already out on the balcony, has of course dealt well with Jeff's Howless and is getting ready to do their big pull as Divine Field is rounded the corner. He needs to make sure. Now this is where they ran into a lot of problem. He needs to be very careful with not the riot shields but the handcuffs. If he gets caught with the handcuffs while he's trying to round up all the mobs together, then they're just in big troubles. Mock goes down though, and this is going to be pretty disastrous unless Ashan can get him up quickly. Most of the aggro is still on Divine though.
Yeah, so Smog being dead here might cause some problem. We see the rest coming up there, so thankfully Shine did manage to get the battle rest back up, so they're all back alive at this point. Now, Divine did pull all the trash from the corner, and this is something they've done beautifully earlier with both of the cannons. So they used both of the cannons to be able to deal with all of this trash that they're now gathering up. And this is where the mage is going to come in. This is where the constant slows, the constant novas from the mage are just going to make this happen. So you want to make sure that Jay stays alive. I think he got hit by some of those volcanics. Either way, you want to also have the Ring of Peace from Smog come in just to gather them as much as possible. And this is where you can see the Blizzard, just slow the mobs that are in front, and then the back ones are not getting slowed, and therefore the back ones can catch up to the front ones, and just making sure everything is grouped perfectly.
Yeah, and so they've already used the Ring of Peace once. He has about 15 seconds or so until it comes back off cooldown for his Mach right now, as the team has indeed backed off and is just waiting for the rest of the trash to catch up. The problem is, as we can see on the left side there, the constant cast of Riot Shields and Suppressive Fire just naturally makes these mobs space out a lot, which is why having that Ring of Peace is absolutely crucial. They don't have the combination potential to get it into an Ursul's Vortex, which would help prevent that problem further, but they have moved over to the second cannon, and we do know that they dedicate both cannons to this 88% trash cap, and then 89, excuse me, and then they skip the rest of it and go straight to Knight Captain Valyria.
Yeah, we see Method now back on Jess Hallis. They are in the second phase at this point. They did manage to finally get Mirrors out of jail, and now we see now actually struggling a little bit with Necrotic, as there were some Arsonists being pulled as well. We saw Abra earlier actually was just seeing the Arsonists and just trying to see some of those mobs just so the Divine Field doesn't get high on Necrotic stacks. But now should be fine here, as Jess is already in 30%, so it's a Fortified setting, not going to take too much longer for them to finish this off. He also has Shield Wall available as he pops it right now. And Abra, on the other hand, though, they dealt with the cannon area so fast. They're already fighting Knight Captain Valyria, so huge advantage for Abra here.
Yeah, huge advantage indeed, and now naturally resets his Necrotic stacks as Bobby runs off to cast a Fear on the other side of the wall, the other side of the jail, essentially, as Jess Hallis casts that Flashing Dagger, so perfect opportunity for the tank to naturally drop those Necrotic stacks with just a bit of backing up. Abrakeydabra, 50% here on Knight Captain Valyria with 89% trash, which you know is the amount perfectly that they need to deal with the remaining 5 mobs plus the 1 Void Emissary that guard the final cannon before we get up to the final boss of the dungeon. Now, Method is still at 24% trash. They didn't have as much trash going into it because they didn't do nearly as crazy as a pull at the beginning of the dungeon. So their cannon play here is going to be even more aggressive, and they're likely not going to be skipping the trash right before Knight Captain Valyria.
Yeah, Method EU definitely has to deal with a lot of trash in his cannon area. So it's going to be interesting to see what they are doing. They also don't have the mage for the constant slow coming out. They do have, of course, the ring, the vortex, and the typhoon come in from the monk and the rest druid, but they still need to do some crazy pulls here to get this off. Either way, it's gonna be too little too late, even if they pull something super crazy in this cannon area, just because Abra, they're already down with Knight Captain Valyria at this point. They have the Bloodlust available. They're gonna be on their way to the last boss once they dealt with this last 11% trash with the cannon. And you know, with the Unholy DK coming in, with the army being available, and just the huge amount of burst, if Dr. J doesn't go down this time around, with all the cooldowns being popped already, then they're gonna kill this last boss in no time.
No time at all, as Divine runs up and grabs the 2 Wardens at the top, combining them down with the 1 Warden and 2 Priests, getting all 5 mobs nice and clumped up together. We can already see somebody run off screen there. I believe it was Swag getting ready to shoot the cannon. Hopefully this time he doesn't kill Divine Field with it. That would be unfortunate. Divine Field, knowing that his teammate hates him, has popped Shield Wall just in case he gets clipped. But they haven't dealt with the Void Emissary at all. Looks like they're trying to drag it over, as Divine Field needs to get past those mobs. It takes quite a bit of damage. Swag Step getting hit for the second stack by that Void Emissary that's there, as Divine has not yet reset his stacks. We do know those Wardens hit for tremendous amounts of damage. They have a natural buff on them that makes them move slower, but increases their physical damage quite a lot. So that's why you see Divine Field kind of dancing in and out, making sure that he doesn't take too much damage.
Yeah, and he also saw Swag had two stacks of the Void Touch Emissary, and right before the third cast went through, he stepped out of the cannon, used his cloak, and stepped back into the cannon to make sure to use the last shot to get rid of the trash. So well done by them there. And now, there we go. We see the Bloodlust being popped, and this time around, everyone is alive still. So this huge amount of single target damage is going to come out from a Shine specifically. Just look at the damage meter. Just look how efficient that burst is from a DK with Bloodlust and all of those cooldowns being popped. And this time around, they only have 1 death. So they improved even from last time around. And look at the time. It's not even 13 minutes into the game. They're going to beat their own record and just clear the dungeon faster than they did the last time around.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, to be sloppier like last time, Jay would have to die on this boss, which he doesn't want to have to do that again. So Overseer Korgus at 45% as Zalia goes down on the side of Method, immediately res by Frag. He's just waiting to take that res as now backs off. A lot of damage coming in from those fortified mobs, and of course the Necrotic stacking up. Zalia finally gets up and takes the res and tries to help out with the rest of the situation. Overseer Korgus here, 30%, and man, I mean, you know, whatever jokes you might want to put out about Method relaxing, trying some off-meta comps, memeing, trolling, not trolling, trying to push innovation. I mean, this was a dungeon where they stuck with a pretty on-meta comp and just did not perform well.
Yeah, definitely not. They had lots of struggles and with things that didn't even, like, they were not even comp specific. They just had problems with skips. They had now not reset his Necrotic, which is something that doesn't really have to do with practice as much. It's really just a sloppy play, as you mentioned, and then just not having to reset the boss. Definitely just some problems coming from Method EU here. So Abra, just clean win. Only one death and such a fast run as well.
And such a fast run, Jack. You know, the opposite of tall is short.
That's
and therefore
right.
the time of the dungeon, instead of long, was also short. So therefore you can actually combine those two and make a play on words.
So there's tall and there's short.
There is.
And there's long and there's short.
There is.
So you have one word that works for two different things.
It is. And therefore Tol Dagor turns into a short word.
What?
Zyra, you stay out of this, okay? I don't want to hear another word from you.
Well, no matter how tall he is.
Okay, back on track here. Abra.
The game's over. It's okay.
The game
I'll
is
take over.
Oh, I was just about to start casting. Okay.
Oh, it's all right. Don't worry about that. I got you. No problem. Abrakeydabra taking the win onto Tole Dagor in a spectacular fashion on that one. And it's ironic. This is what we've seen from them before. We saw very early on today how they were bringing out that Frost Mage and how well they were able to organize and rally those mobs together to obliterate them with the cannon. And they capitalized on Method EU's mistakes there. And it almost seemed like, I think Nagura mentioned it early on, where they lost that first match and then they're like, okay, let's all switch back to the meta comp real quick.
Well, I don't think it was so much that the reason they swapped back to the meta comp. I think what it is with Method EU is they just didn't get that much practice in this week. Maybe some game came out last week that they spent time doing instead of playing BFA. I'm not sure what it would have been,
about.
but it makes sense that they would swap back to the meta comp for this dungeon because, like we mentioned earlier, these are the exact same affixes as 2 weekends ago. They have practice on this comp in this dungeon, so it makes sense that they would go back to it. That being said, it was clear that there wasn't that much practice into it because they were very sloppy. But that being said, Abrakeydabra looked absolutely lights out in this dungeon. This is the first time that we've seen like a super clean run in Tol Dagor, minus the 2 or 3 deaths right at the end of the dungeon. That would have been like a 13:25 Tol Dagor, which is the fastest we've seen in tournament play so far. It's just crazy impressive to see how Abrakeydabra is playing. I think they kind of have like a grudge after how they won 2 weekends ago. Like they have to prove that they deserve that win now. It's the way they're playing right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think Method NA and Abra, the two teams that have beaten Method EU previously, and then for the first time for both of them, they both kind of felt, oh, well, we weren't quite the best team. We didn't feel like we were the best team whenever we got our win against them. And right there, Salute, it just felt like they were able to capitalize on those mistakes, and they were playing at the level that they should be.
Yeah, almost. I mean, there's still the hiccups on the last boss. I don't know what it is. Yeah. They're still kind of, bursting at the seams of the usual Abrakeydabra magic or lack of magic at the end of the dungeon. But they managed to pull it off, and even with those deaths, I mean, Method EU was nowhere close. And, Zyra, what you're saying, I don't disagree with that. Method EU probably didn't get the practice in. We know now loves to play WoW Classic, and when you don't have your tank there, well...
Is that what it was?
I think that might be what it was. But, on top of it, not the entire team was doing it. We know Gingy, he publicly stated he hates to lose. So, even though they might be having some fun with this, I don't think it's settling very well with some of the teammates that they have this kind of performance when, frankly, their hiccups and their deaths had nothing to do with practice. I mean, it was just refreshing a necrotic stack in the corner, poorly timed ROPs, things like that. So, I'm not really sure how much strat practice would have helped with just player mistakes.
Not only that, I think the most apparent mistake they made was Mirez didn't quite do his flying serpent kick skip properly, so instead of the boss moving through the cage, he got ported to the boss. He got like a line of sight, the reverse snap through the cage, ended up dying on the other side of the cage, and because they were in combat with the Void Emissary, they couldn't get their res off on him because they didn't have Shadow Meld available. It cost them like 2 minutes of time where they were just standing there waiting for Shadow Meld to come off CD. Just small individual mistakes like that. Like clearly they weren't like very well they weren't practiced. They weren't ready to play the match, it looks like, pretty much.
Yeah, and that's one of those different items where that pops up a lot of times when you have to deal with any of the snap setups, right? You look at the different interactions, the different issues that can come from it. We've seen it before with Shrine of the Storm, for example, when you jump into the puddle just before the second boss. If you jump in, then you can start causing some mobs to evade rather than just walking into it, and then all of them will group up properly. For as many times as they should be practicing onto that one, it's just one of those simple mistakes that burns up a massive amount of time for them and causes them, to lose a lot of time and have to just watch their opponents fly on by.